The world's getting hotter, and it's not global warming. It's political tension driven by emotion. Now we worry if civility is dead. Well, is it? The good news, most of America isn't what's on TV. The shouting on camera is what attracts the camera in the first place, so you see more of it. However, it may not be a bad idea to lower the temperature. Why not a peace movement, or at least a keep the peace movement? To kick it off, let's admit one key truth. Almost all people who disagree with each other think that they're the good guys. A smart man, Norm Macdonald, once tweeted, today actually, the idiot sees the world as good versus evil. The cynic sees the world as evil versus evil. The truth that no one seems able to see is that the world is and has always been a battle of good versus good. So everyone who annoys you, they think they're right. But so do you, and that annoys them. The solution, understand first that we live our lives with different filters, and these filters clash. Still, we all want the same thing, and that's good, healthy lives for us and everyone. During Hurricane Harvey, we saw deplorables and non-deplorables alike saving lives. So what if we looked at this current political climate as a natural event and lent a hand? So what do you do in hard times? You help, you compromise, and when possible, you always forgive. Isn't it a time for a peace movement begun by conservatives? After all, you're the guys in charge. Now, you may not get anything in return. If someone thinks you're evil, all you can do through your actions is prove them wrong. If it doesn't work, at least you know that you have done right rather than simply be right. Boom. Hey, so, Juan, I want to go to you first. I believe that if we were going to create some kind of reduction in hostilities, it's got to come from conservatives, because you can't expect it from the people who are out of power. When you are out of power, it is almost natural not to play nice because you're upset that you're out of power. So it's more like the responsibility of the people, conservatives, supporters of Trump, to extend the hand. Does that make sense?
Yeah, in fact, I'm sort of thrilled that you would say this. I mean, I really appreciate it, Greg, because it seems to me that there's so much animosity in the air, and everybody is throwing something. It's beyond spitballs at each other at this point, and suspect of their motives. So listening to what you said about Norm Macdonald saying it's good versus good, I was like, you know, sometimes I think people who don't have good in mind simply want to line their pockets or want more power for themselves or trying to advantage their friends are doing business. Now, obviously, at the moment, I have very strong feelings about separating children from families, right? So, I mean, I'm not going to deny those feelings, and I don't want to be shut up and expressing my feelings, but I do think that we are out of control in terms of the mockery, the bullying, the kind of attitude that says, you know what, you're not worthy, you're not an American if you're not playing with my team.
You know, Jesse, the counter-argument to this is that screw civility. They've made politics personal, so now it's our turn. How do you get out of that thing where you go like, okay, I'm willing to be civil even if you aren't? And it could go for either side.
Well, it's tough to kind of unilaterally lay down your weapons in politics because it's such a cutthroat industry. It was just, what, a year ago when Steve Scalise was shot by a Bernie bro, and everybody around this table said, listen, we need to lower the temperature, tone down the rhetoric, and unite as a country. And a year later, here we are in the exact same spot where it's very, very vicious. And I think both sides need to tell their own people to chill a little bit and get back to basics. We're all Americans. The thing we did yesterday with our heritage, we have more in common than we have different than each other. So that's a good thing. But at the same time, there is a difference when Trump retweets a video of himself body slamming a CNN logo and some of the things that have gone on the left. I mean, it was in the inauguration that the left firebombed a limousine. We've had Black Lives Matter people chant death to cops. We've had Antifa smash store windows. Hollywood has fantasized about Trump child rape and beheadings. Nancy Pelosi herself said the tax cuts were literally going to kill people. So I remember back in the Obama administration, a rodeo clown dressed up as President Obama, and he lost his job immediately. And now a Senate staffer for a Democratic senator yelled, "F you," to the President of the United States, Donald Trump, as he was passing by, and she kept her job. So, you know, I'm willing to listen and I'm willing to say when my side is wrong, but the other side needs to be accountable too. And right now there's a division in the Democratic Party. What are the Trump resistance tactics going to be? You have establishment politicians like Schumer and Pelosi who know how to win elections. You know, Democrats win when they're moderate or pretend to be moderate, and they get it, and they know when to condemn. But then the activists, where the energy are, they're okay, and they want to confront people in the street. They like the mob action. That excites them. And they're going to have to struggle with that internal turmoil all the way through 2020, because right now the division is on that side, and it's getting pretty ugly.
Yeah, as you know, Kimberly, I am not practicing religious person, but we know that the Christ-like thing is to turn the other cheek. So when Jesse talks about this side that is more hostile, the reaction should be to turn the other cheek. But do you see that happening when it gets more heated?
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, it's a very good discussion, a healthy discussion to try to, you know, create some kind of unity, some civility, you know, on both sides. I think it's not helpful to finger point and say, well, they're worse than this side, et cetera. Like, everyone has to accept their own personal responsibility for their discourse, their rhetoric, their conduct, everyone, including the President of the United States. And then, you know, we lead individually by example. But, you know, what I don't like is the threats of violence, to have people harmed, physical, you know, violence, or turning away a family, saying they can't eat at a place, or things like that, and just taking it, you know, too far. It's okay to have, you know, healthy discussions and disagreements about political philosophy or ideology. But when it comes to making threats like that of physical harm or showing just total disrespect, you know, I just don't, it's unbecoming. It's conduct unbecoming.
Yeah. Do you, Dana, the bottom, this is an eternal conflict that no one in war thinks they're the bad guy. So if everyone thinks they're right, that they're the good guys, how do you get the person who thinks they're right to also see that you might be right? Isn't that the answer for this eternal question?
I think that it is a lot about personal relationships. Remember, during the Obama administration, it was always surprising that he waited so long to play golf with John Boehner.
Yeah.
The things that what a personal relationship can do. And there was a couple of times, I think, that the Democrats came to have dinner at the White House and things like that in this current administration. But turn the other cheek has become replaced by counterpunching.
Yeah.
And it's successful.
Yeah.
So do I see it changing? Not necessarily, unless people realize, like, whoa, we are really close to unraveling what we have built. And to me, civility is a choice. So every time you decide to say something, and if you're privileged to be on television, to have a chance to give your opinions about something or debate something with somebody, you have a choice in what you say. And I also don't want to be responsible for other people's words. So policing your own side is, there's something to be said about that, but I also feel like that's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
So it does start with the self. The other thing I'd point out is Selena Zito, the columnist who wrote a great book, but now I can't remember. But it's about sort of the Trump's America, like who was voting for Trump and why. She wrote a piece today about the death of these civil society organizations. We talked about the Freemasons the other day. Things like that, where you had organizations where people could belong, and nobody wants to really belong to anything anymore except for to their side.
Right.
And that leaves a real dearth of the possibility of getting people together.
Juan, there are people that believe calls for civility are incompatible with free speech. It's like, okay, whenever I come in and I march and my voice is loud, you're calling that incivility, when in fact free speech matters when it's incivil. I can see that point. Like, you know, it's like you don't want to hear the loud noises, but that's the only time you listen. But is that actually allowing for too much?
No, what are you talking about? This is America. I mean, you should be able.
But going to somebody's house, like going to somebody's house.
No, look. I mean, you have to open your eyes to reality. There are people who want to protest and have a legitimate grievance, which is about the children or some of the other policies of this administration. The question is, how do you handle it? I mean, you know, part of this has to do with the breakdown of facts. And people saying, well, I didn't hear about that. That's not a fact I'm familiar with, and that kind of thing. And so people have to get this straight. You know, I saw a poll knowing that we were going to discuss this, and the poll says that since President Trump's been in office, now 67%, I think it's two-thirds, including two-thirds of Republicans, say the tone and the stability in the country has gone down. So Trump, I mean, he has to take some responsibility, but that doesn't mean that the left has to then say, oh, so since he's doing that and acting and saying lock her up and all that kind of stuff, that we have to behave that way. I do think there are politics involved, and I think there's a calculation. You know, when Trump says some of these very provocative things, it stirs up his base. But guess what? I think that the Democrats then, and this responds to what Jesse was saying, the Democrats have to be smart enough to say, yeah, you can express your views, but we don't want to feed this attitude on the part of the right that, oh, the left is so condescending and arrogant and mean-spirited. I mean, you got to at some point say, no, that's not what we're about. That's not who we are.
And I think you saw that with Pelosi and Schumer come out against what Maxine Waters said, and we've seen instances now recently. Someone burned a dead carcass of an animal on a Trump official's front stoop and chasing Sarah Sanders Huckabee out of a restaurant. Or going outside of, following her across the street, or going outside of Stephen Miller's apartment and chanting threatening things. And to what you were saying earlier, and you've said this before, sometimes you assume the other side has evil intentions, when in fact they're either misguided or they just have a different political philosophy. And President Trump in the beginning, I used to think if anybody could work with President Trump, it's the Democrats. And he showed that. I think he went against Ryan and McConnell and went with Pelosi and Schumer when it came to DACA in the beginning. He's willing to reach across the aisle. Right now, just that gulf seems really deep.
As you know, Dana, as a Jewish Native American, I think that one of the big mistakes in incivility is labeling people. And I think we noticed that even in the primaries, people calling each other rhinos and things like that was like a thing that, like, the division wasn't just left or right. Nope. The division was within each separate division.
And it was swallow it. You know, you are going to have to accept that being nice didn't work. So this is what we're going to do. It's a new world. And now we're talking about that there are dangers of incivility because it could lead to possible violence. I mean, these haven't gotten violent yet, though I would argue that the burning of the carcass on the front porch, like, you're going to think that you're being attacked. At that point, what do you do? Like, it could spiral out of control. We have such a gift of being able to live in freedom and with liberty and justice for all here in America that you have to work to preserve it. Do not lose this chance to have this really great, wonderful country continue.
It's true, because if you let it get away from you, you know, and you see things like spiraling now, and it feels like dangerous times in terms of just the incendiary rhetoric, the actions, the violent protests, and, you know, nobody wins with that.
So I say, listen. You know, if there was one thing, listen. The other person has something to say, and they deserve to be heard.
Absolutely.